Lyme disease is often untreated before complications become severe. Michael J. Fox and Daryl Hall are some of the famous names who have contracted this debilitating illness. Now a Connecticut mother is talking about how she passed this disease to her child. Elise Brady is among many featured in a new documentary, Under Our Skin, and she's here to tell us her story. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, when did you find out that you contracted Lyme disease?
I found out when my daughter, my first child, was about 4 months old. Started having some joint pain, not feeling well. Talked to some neighbors, and some neighbors who lived in the area said, you may have Lyme disease. And I looked at them and said, really? Okay, well, what do I do? And went off to my general practitioner. He said, oh, no, you have rheumatoid arthritis. I said, I'm 35 years old. I can't, how can this be? He said, oh, let's do the test. Came back negative. He said, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. So I continued to do some exploration. I'm very inquisitive. I talked to the neighbors, did some research, went and found a Lyme literate physician, did proper blood work, did a clinical diagnosis. They said, yes, you have Lyme disease, let's treat you.
I mean, are some of the symptoms, like you mentioned, like rheumatoid arthritis, they're consistent with other illnesses too, so you may think it's not Lyme disease.
Absolutely.
Now, do you know how you contracted Lyme disease?
I do. I was doing some gardening when we had just purchased our new home. I remember now, thinking back, sitting in a very tick-infested area, not realizing that I was even being possibly infected.
Right.
I must have received a bite. I never saw the tick. I never had the rash. And then I got a flu-like type of couple of days, very bad chills. Just was in bed for a couple of days thinking, oh, this is strange. It's October. Got better. Kind of my immune system dealt with it, and then continued on with my life. And
now you also passed this on to your child as well.
I did. Unfortunately, well, what happened was I had my daughter. She was born, and about 4 months later, I started to feel the joint pain and not feel, that's when it all kicked in.
Right.
I was treated. We thought my symptoms were at a point where we could continue and try and get pregnant. We got pregnant. Was doing okay, had some odd joint pain, said, you know, I'm not feeling great. And they said, well, it's probably just because you're pregnant. At 18 weeks, the baby was, I miscarried. So I insisted the OB test the baby, the fetus, and the OB kind of pushed back a little. And I said, no, you're testing this fetus. And he came back a couple weeks later and said, you were right. The infection, the Lyme infection, killed this baby. And
that is something that can be obviously passed
I have
along.
proof. I have documented proof. And it happened a second time. A few months later, I got pregnant. 9 weeks. They tested, it was infected as well. And so that's when I went to very aggressive treatment for Lyme disease and had the IV and continued oral antibiotics. Got pregnant one more time, thinking maybe this is it, and had my little boy. And the actual birth and the experience is documented in the film.
Now, talk about the documentary. How did you get involved with this documentary?
I became an advocate for educating the community once I had been through what I'd been through. I turned all of my anger and sadness into action and became an advocate and an educator. From that point, my name kind of was floating around regarding my experience, and the documentary was being made, and they were asking the Lyme community for people who had experiences that may be something to talk about. They reached out to me, and at first it was a little uneasy to have them film my birth, but it was so worth it, and I know I've saved many people.
Now, where do you go from here? Obviously, you are very involved with with educating people about Lyme disease. This film is running from the 10th through the 15th, so it is still currently running now.
Yes.
And you can see it at Real Artways in Hartford. Of course, all that information is on our screen now. Now, you mentioned to me just a few moments ago that this is under control for you, but many people have a much more difficult time.
I really am what they call a healthy patient. I have only had the miscarriage and the joint pain here and there. There are children in wheelchairs. There are people who cannot work. There are people who have been misdiagnosed with MS, ALS, Alzheimer's. The list goes on. And this is all in the film.
Documentary.
It really does a brilliant job of identifying the journey of many patients and the misdiagnosis and the core issues around this disease.
Wonderful. Elise, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We're now